What's up, strongest men, women, and children from blocks all around the world? I am my block's strongest man. And tonight I wanted to jump on here to carry on the World's Strongest Man 2021 discussion and talk about where does World's Strongest Man 2021 winner Tom Stoltman rank among finalists in the past 10 years. So I went through Strongman Archives, which is a very well-known website to a lot of us, and I looked through not only the winners or podium finishers, but all of the finalists in the past 10 years and tried to decipher if you were to do point totals, podium finishes, top 5 finishes, and so forth and so on, where does Tom Stoltman rank? And so, of course, it's not an exact science. Hey, what's up, World's Strongest Blacksmith? So, of course, it's not an exact science unless I do this analysis for all the years that World's Strongest Man has happened, because, of course, if I'm doing an analysis of just the past 10 years, I'm kind of cutting into the middle of Big Z's reign and not accumulating all of the points that he has. But I just wanted to get on here and do a little bit of data analysis tonight about World's Strongest Man 2021 and just take a look at what Tom has accomplished and kind of where it falls in the overall picture. So people actually asked me on my previous live streams, did Tom Stoltman score the highest points ever? And the answer to that is not even close. So in 2014, the top 3 podium finishers all were 61 points and above. Brian Shaw was 3rd place with 61 points in 2014. Tom Stoltman, by comparison, had 45.5 this year. So a great accomplishment, but by no means the highest ever, not even close. I'm just looking in the last 10 years, and it's not even close. So here's kind of the layout of what we had in columns C and D. That's 2021 and the points for the 10 gentlemen who were in the finals in 2021. So Tom Stoltman, 45.5, Brian Shaw, 42.5, and so forth. Then as we go across to the right on this sheet, I started going back to 2020, 2019, and so forth, all the way back to 2012, so that we have 10 years of data to kind of look at. And then as we went across, of course, I added the people that won in previous years that didn't compete this year, and that's why it got taller and taller and taller, so that we can get a good comparison. So this is kind of all the data. Then if you move all the way to the right, I counted how many finals each of these guys appeared in, again, only in the past 10 years. So the 10-year mark could have cut off some of their reigns. Their average placing, so that's why you see it's kind of has 2 decimal points there, because if you have, for example, Tom Stoltman placed 1st this year, 2nd last year, and 5th the year before that. So if you average all those together, it's 2.67. And I realize 2.67 isn't an actual placing, but to be able to compare him to Brian Shaw, who's slightly higher at 2.9, you need a way to tell who's better than the other. And Tom's average is actually slightly better than Brian's, although it's not a fair comparison because Brian competed so many more times and had so many more chances to fluctuate. So keep that all in mind as we discuss this. So that being said, let's move on to how you can break this data down possibly. So if you break it down by how many finals they were in, Brian Shaw was in 10 finals out of 10 years. So he comes in 1st there. JF Caron was in 9 finals. And so I'm right over here in column W, was in 9 finals out of 10 years. And Hafthor Bjornsson was in 8 finals. And then it goes from there. So again, Big Z was in 6, but that's because I'm cutting it off at the 10-year mark. When I get to the point of expanding this to more than 10 years, these numbers may change. But in that 10-year period, those are the top 3 guys, Shaw, Caron, and then Hafthor Bjornsson. And you'll see a pattern here as we break it down differently. So if we now go by average placing, you'll see how these things resort themselves. And so let me flip over to that. The mouse is really giving me trouble today. Sorry about that. Okay, so if we go by average placing and then now look at column X, of course, Alexei Novikov made it one time and won, so he's going to have the best placing of one. That's an unfair comparison. I mean, kudos to him to getting there and winning the whole thing. That's hard to do, but it's hard to compare somebody who's been there once to somebody who's been there, for example, as many times as Hafthor has, on row 2. So Hafthor actually has the second best average placing of anybody in the last 10 years at 2.38. And then comes Tom Stoltman. So when we ask, how does Tom Stoltman compare to these guys? Tom Stoltman's average placing in the 3 times he was in the finals is 2.67, which is incredible. So he placed 1, 2, and 5. So looking at the data in that way, he ranks 3 of every finalist who's ever been at World's Strongest Man in that 10-year time period. And if you're wondering how many people that might be, it's 37. So 37 different guys have been finalists at World's Strongest Man in the past 10 years. And so again, like for someone like Brian, if he repeats and comes the next year, you count him once. So 37 different guys have been finalists at World's Strongest Man. And if you're wondering what that complete list is, let's take a look. So it's Novikov, Thor, Tom Stoltman, Brian Shaw, Maxime Boudreau, Eddie Hall, Martins Lisis, Vitautas Lalas, Big Z, Mateusz Kieliszkowski, Mike Jenkins, Mike Burke, JF Caron, Trey Mitchell, Krzysztof Radziskowski, Dave Osland, Johan Els, Terry Hollins, Luke Stoltman, Kevin Ferris, Dimitar Savatinov, Konstantin Janasha, Jerry Pritchett, Adam Bishop, Maciej Belsak, Ivar Schmuckstelis, Mark Brandt, Gregor Zemansky, Mark Felix, Robert Oberst, Johannes Arcio, Big Laz, Lawrence Chalet, Bobby Thompson, Luke Richardson, Mikhail Shivlikov, Athor Melstead, Nick Best, Irvin Katona, Mikhail Kokliev, Graham Hicks, and Martin Wildauer. So those are all of the different finalists who have been at World's Strongest Man. So that being said, if we now look at the data by average points, so not placing, but how many points did they earn, we can resort the data by that. And again, I don't know what's going on with my mouse today. Let's try to here. Okay. So if we look at it by average points, now you're looking at column Y. So in column Y, Hafthor now jumps to the top of the list. And you're starting to see a pattern here. Hafthor and Brian are kind of at the top of the list no matter how you slice and dice the data. And the third person kind of jumps in and out. It's JF a lot of the time, and sometimes Alexei. But Hafthor and Brian are right up there. So Hafthor Bjornsson has averaged 48.3 points in all of the times that he's been a finalist in these past 10 years. And again, he made 8 finals out of this 10-year period and averaged 48.3 points, which is almost 3 points higher than Tom scored this year. So just putting things in perspective, definitely got to give Thor his due. Crazy consistency. Like, look across row 5 here. So 2019, third place. 2018, he won. 2017, second. 2016, second. 2015, third. 2014, second. 2013, third. 2012, third. It's crazy what he accomplished in that 10-year period. And then right after him is Novikov. Again, he only made it 1 year and had 47 points that 1 year. So that puts him in second all-time for average points. But again, it's a little unfair to compare one data point to somebody who's done it so consistently over so many years. Then you have third, Brian Shaw, 45.8 points is what he averages in his finals, in the 10 finals he made out of those 10 years. Now, what we can do is look at it a little bit differently and look at it now by total points. So we looked at average points, and now we want to look at longevity. So average points was consistency, but total points is longevity. And when you talk about longevity, Brian Shaw has a considerable lead over Thor, who is number 2, and Thor has a very substantial lead over JF, who is number 3. So again, this is likely cutting into some years for Zydrunas because we're only looking at the past 10 years. But in that 10-year period, in the past 10 years, including this year's World's Strongest Man, Brian Shaw accumulated 458 total points. Hafthor, 386.5. JF Caron, 282. Those are the top 3 guys. So where is Tom, you might ask? So Tom is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10. 3, 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Tom is 10th place with 119 total points. Now, of course, in 3 finals, he's not going to accumulate anywhere near what Brian does in 10, and we'll see what he does in the 10 years to come, and we'll do this analysis one more time. But again, we have to pick a certain number of years, a fixed point in time, and in that fixed point in time, Brian Shaw has dominated, and Hafthor is the closest to him. So that being said, now let's look at how many podiums different guys did, and then sort it by how many top 5s after that, and then we'll wrap it up. So if we look at finals by podium, we now have Hafthor again at the top of the list. Now you're looking at column AA. Hafthor has 8 podiums in this 10-year period. Brian Shaw, second with 7, and then Big Z third with 4th. And again, another reminder, we probably have some podiums for Z that are not in this 10-year period. But just showing you the consistency and the accumulation of excellence over time for Brian Shaw and Hafthor. So whereas Tom is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th on the list, which is not bad considering he only has 3 finals on the list to compare to guys with lots of finals. So Tom, again, with 2 podiums last year and this year, obviously. And then we'll round it off by just sorting by top 5. So who has the most top 5 finishes, would you think? It's Brian Shaw and Hafthor second. So they keep switching places with each other in each way that you slice and dice the data. Brian Shaw has 9 top 5s out of the 10 finals that he made in the last 10 years. An incredible, incredible statistic. And Thor right behind him with 8 top 5s out of the last 10 years. And let's keep in mind, Thor's been retired, so he didn't compete this year. He didn't compete last year either, right? So, like, who knows what would have happened. And then right after Thor is JF Caron with 6 top 5s. So as I said, Brian and Hafthor and sometimes Alexi switching places in these statistics, and JF jumping in and out of that top 3 with Big Z kind of biting at their heels. Once I expand the data out to maybe 20 years or something like that, let's see if Big Z overtakes them in some of these statistics. But I thought it would be really interesting to go through this and have a look at where Tom Stoltman stacks up now and where we think his potential is to jump up as the years progress and as he makes more finals. Hopefully he makes more finals. I think everybody would say he will. So here on top 5s, he ranks 6th again with 3, right? So he made top 5 all 3 times, which you could say percentage-wise is the best, right? Brian made top 5 9 out of 10 times, which is 90%. Tom made it every time, which is 100%. So that's very interesting. We can actually take this data on future live streams or future videos and kind of walk through it and dice it in different ways and talk about some different pieces of information. Like, for example, who is the person who is the best performer in World's Strongest Man finals to never win, to never get on a podium? I'll let the cat out of the bag. It's Mike Jenkins. And we can talk about how the data breaks down there. But you know, that being said, I hope you enjoyed this data breakdown. Patrick, I see you, buddy. What's up, Patrick? Wow, that's not really that many people for a 10-year window. Just shows how good the people who make the finals are. Yeah, it was 37. Funny enough, I had 38, and then I realized I counted Jerry Pritchett twice, so I had to. It is, in fact, 37 guys who have made the finals. But yeah, so if you look at average placing over time, and you define the podium, obviously, as first, second, or third, and you see which guy who has 0 podiums in the last 10 years still has the highest average placing. It's Mike Jenkins. And I think Mike Burke is right behind him. They're 4 point something. So Mike Jenkins averaged a placing, like he placed 5th and 4th. So he averages like 4.5 and didn't make a podium either time. So we can go through a lot more kind of slicing and dicing. We can take that same data next time and say, how good is Brian Shaw really against these other guys? How good is Alexi against these other guys? How good is, Hafthor against these other guys? So I want to really put together a big body of data that could get us telling lots of stories about World's Strongest Man in the days and weeks to come. So we don't have to kind of let it go now that it's over. We can still have a lot of detailed discussions. So thanks again for joining me again, Tyler. You appreciate the perspective, and I appreciate you, buddy. So thank you, everybody who joined this evening. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. And a huge thank you to everybody who who did, in fact, get me over that 1,000 subscriber mark. I really do appreciate that. And we'll try to put together a proper party with it. Maybe I'll do my flashing blue and red lights or something. We'll put something together. Once I get my monetization approved, maybe I'll do a t-shirt giveaway or something like that. And really do appreciate it very much. We did get over the hump. And looking forward to, in the coming weeks, promoting Big Laz's upcoming competition, the Strongman Classic at Royal Albert Hall. If you haven't checked that out yet, Google it. The the competitors there will blow your mind. It's like World's Strongest Man 2. Both Stoltmans are there. Mark Felix is supposed to compete. JF is supposed to compete. I don't know if he'll be healed in time, but he's on the list. I believe Adam Bishop's on the list. Big Laz is obviously on the list. Iron Bibby's on the list. It's a who's who of the strongest men in the world. So at first I thought, oh, like, you know, it's not worlds and maybe a lower or a mid-level competition. No, this is a world-level competition. So I'm definitely going to be giving a lot of coverage to that, a lot of coverage to the Shaw Classic, official Strongman games coming up in November. So a lot of really interesting stuff coming up. And please make sure you tune in for all of it. Hit that subscribe, hit that like button. And, of course, until next time, ciao, homie.